The fluorescent hum of aisle 4 is a low-frequency vibrate that rattles the teeth. It is a sterile, blindingly white world where the air tastes of cardboard and artificial vanilla. Min-jae Park stands motionless, a shark in a shallow pool. His fitted white shirt is crisp, but it cannot contain the darkness creeping up his throat, the ink-black vines of his tattoos peeking above his collar like a warning. He reaches for a box of honey-coated oats, his movements calculated and silent, the precision of a man who calculates the trajectory of a bullet before he pulls the trigger. He is not here to be seen. He is here to be a ghost. But the world has a way of pulling ghosts back into the light. 10 feet away, the silence breaks, not with a shout, but with the rhythmic, frantic click-clack of red plastic beads. A little girl, no older than 7, stands anchored to the floor. She is a vibrant splash of color against the drab shelves, caramel skin, a red striped shirt, and white denim overalls. But it is her hand that stops Min-jae's heart. She has her right arm raised high. Her palm is open, facing Min-jae. Her fingers are straight, rigid with a tension no child should possess. Her eyes, vast, dark pools of ancient sorrow, lock onto his. She doesn't blink. She doesn't cry. She watches him with a terrifying, steady focus, as if she is memorizing the face of her last hope. Beside her, a man grips her left hand. His knuckles are white, his skin etched with the jagged, ugly scales of a coiling snake tattoo that twists around his forearm. The man is vibrating with a jagged, nervous energy, his eyes darting toward the security cameras, then back to the exit. He tugs her arm, a sharp, cruel jerk that makes the red beads in her hair dance violently. Min-jae freezes. His internal compass, honed in the blood-soaked boardrooms of Seoul's underworld, screams a warning. This is not a tantrum. This is a kidnapping in progress. He watches as the girl's thumb slowly, deliberately tucks into her palm. One by one, her fingers fold over it, trapping the thumb in a fist, the universal signal for help. The man with the snake tattoo leans down, his breath likely smelling of the cheap cigarettes and desperation that Min-jae recognizes from a mile away. He whispers into the girl's ear, his grip tightening until her small shoulder hunches toward her chin. She winces, but her eyes never leave Min-jae's. She repeats the signal. Open palm, thumb in, fingers down. Min-jae's blood turns to liquid nitrogen. He knows this man. He knows the snake. It's the mark of the K Street Vipers, bottom feeders who scavenge in the shadows of Min-jae's own empire. He looks at his own hands, scarred, lethal, stained by a decade of necessary evils. He is the monster parents warn their children about. He is the shadow in the alley. He is the Korean Mafia's most efficient blade. The moment Min-jae realized what her hand signal meant, everything inside him shifted, because someone like him wasn't supposed to be a hero, but fate didn't care. Min-jae Park does not breathe. He inhales the atmosphere. Every instinct he possesses, the ones that have kept him alive in the concrete jungles of Incheon and the back alleys of this city, flares to life. He shifts his weight onto the balls of his feet, a subtle adjustment that transforms him from a shopper into a predator. To the casual observer, he is just a man looking at cereal. To the girl, he is a mountain appearing through the fog. His gaze narrows, deconstructing the scene with surgical precision. He notices the girl's posture, the way she leans away from the man, her body creating a microscopic vacuum of space between them. He notices the way her red beads don't just click. They tremble. Her fear isn't loud. It isn't messy. It is a cold, calculated terror that has been beaten into silence. It is the kind of fear Min-jae himself felt 20 years ago, standing in a rain-slicked shipyard while men in black suits decided his fate. Ignore it. A voice in the back of his head whispers. It's the voice of the Mafia boss, the strategist who knows that a clean record in a public place is worth more than a stranger's life. Walk away. You have a meeting at 6. You have a shipment coming into the docks. You are not a savior. But the girl's eyes are like gravity. They are dark, obsidian anchors that pin his soul to the linoleum floor. She isn't just asking for help. She is recognizing him. She sees the darkness in him and, in her desperation, has decided that his brand of darkness is better than the one holding her hand. Min-jae lets the box of oats slide back onto the shelf. The sound of cardboard hitting metal is like a gunshot in the quiet aisle. The man with the snake tattoo snaps his head toward Min-jae. His eyes are yellowed, the pupils blown wide with a cocktail of adrenaline and something synthetic. He sees Min-jae's tattoos, the expensive watch, the way his shoulders block out the light. The snake isn't just a criminal. He's a low-level thug, and he recognizes a king when he sees one. He hitches his trousers, his hand hovering near the waistband where the telltale bulge of a compact pistol ruins the line of his cheap jacket. "Keep walking, pal," the man grunts. His voice is a gravelly rasp, thin and lacking the weight of true authority. He tries to sound tough, but Min-jae smells the sweat, sour, metallic, and rank. Min-jae takes one step forward. Just one. His shoes make no sound on the polished floor. "She doesn't look like she's having fun," Min-jae says. His voice is a low, melodic baritone that vibrates in the girl's chest. It is the sound of a calm before a devastating storm. The man's grip on the girl's wrist turns white. He yanks her closer, using her small body as a human shield. "She's my kid. She's tired. Mind your own business before you find out how much mine hurts." Min-jae looks at the girl's hand again. Still raised. It hasn't wavered once. The bravery in that tiny, trembling limb is more than he has seen in his entire organization. She is staring at him, her lips pressed together so hard they've turned white, begging him with a silence that is louder than a scream. In that moment, the world narrows down to a single point. The girl's palm. The Mafia boss dies for a second, replaced by something Min-jae thought he'd buried under a decade of blood and iron. The girl pressed her thumb into her palm, an unmistakable cry for help, and Min-jae knew he had seconds to decide. Min-jae moves. It isn't a dash. It is a slow, inevitable encroaching of shadows. He closes the distance until he is exactly 4 feet away, the kill zone where a man's reach meets his intent. He stands tall, his shadow stretching over the colorful boxes of Fruity Loops and Cocoa Puffs, effectively eclipsing the man with the snake tattoo. "I wasn't talking to you," Min-jae says, his voice dropping an octave into a cold, rhythmic pulse. He looks directly at the girl. "I was talking to her." The supermarket, once a backdrop of mundane commerce, begins to warp. At the end of the aisle, an elderly woman stops her cart, the wheels squeaking once before falling silent. A teenager stocking shelves 2 rows over pauses, a gallon of milk hovering in midair. The air conditioning hums louder, yet the air feels thinner, sucked out by the vacuum of Min-jae's presence. The snake-tattooed man, a bottom feeder named Miller, if Min-jae's memory of the Viper Tongs roster serves him, begins to unravel. His free hand twitches near his hip. His eyes are frantic, darting from Min-jae's face to the tattoos on his forearms. He knows he's outclassed. He knows that if this man is who the ink suggests he is, Miller is already a dead man walking. "I said she's mine. Get lost, you Yakuza wannabe." Miller's voice cracks, the pitch rising into a shrill, desperate bark. Min-jae doesn't blink. He reads the man's body language like a familiar ledger. The frantic blinking, deception, the shifting weight, fear. The way his elbow flares out, he's going for the piece. Min-jae's mind operates in milliseconds, calculating the physics of the encounter. If the gun comes out, the girl is at the center of the trajectory. He has to keep the snake's attention on him and him alone. "Let go of her hand," Min-jae commands. It isn't a request. It is a decree from a throne. "Make me..." Miller sneers, though his bottom lip trembles. He pulls the girl so sharply her beads clack against the metal shelving. "You think you're some kind of hero? You're a suit with some fancy ink. You don't want this smoke, Park. I know who you are. I know who you work for." The mention of his name causes a ripple of recognition in Min-jae's chest, but his face remains a mask of granite. He takes one more step, entering Miller's personal space. The scent of the man is overwhelming now, stale beer, unwashed denim, and the acrid metallic tang of a coward's sweat. The little girl is frozen, her hands still tucked into a fist, her knuckles white. She is looking at Min Jae with an intensity that demands action. She isn't just a victim. She is the witness to his soul. "You're vibrating," Min Jae observes quietly, his eyes drifting to Miller's twitching hand. "That's adrenaline. It makes you sloppy. Sloppy men make mistakes. And in my world, mistakes are buried in the marsh." Miller's face contorts. The bravado is failing. He realizes that the shoppers are watching, that the quiet grocery run has turned into a hostage situation in the making. He leans in closer to Min Jae, his eyes narrowing into slits of pure, concentrated malice. He ignores the girl for a second, focusing all his venom on the man in the white shirt. He pulls Min Jae toward him by the collar with his free hand, his breath hot and foul against Min Jae's ear. The man leaned in and whispered something that made Min Jae's blood run cold. The whisper is a jagged blade. "She's not just a payday, Park. She's the daughter of the man who sold your last shipment to the Federals. We're just collecting the interest." The revelation hits Min Jae with the force of a physical blow, but his expression remains an unbreakable sheet of ice. The girl is a pawn in a game of blood and betrayal he thought he had under control. But looking down at her, the politics of the underworld vanish. She isn't a debt or an asset. She is a child whose beads are clicking because she is shivering in a climate-controlled room. In that fraction of a second, the girl sees the shift in the air. She senses the moment Miller's focus flickers from her to the man he's trying to intimidate. With a sudden, desperate burst of strength, she sinks her teeth into Miller's meaty thumb. "Ag!" Miller howls, his grip involuntarily springing open. She doesn't run toward the exit. She doesn't run toward the other shoppers who are now gasping and retreating. She dives toward the shadow of the man in the white shirt. Her small, warm hands seize the fabric of Min Jae's trousers, and she tucks herself behind his legs, using his massive frame as a human fortress. The sensation of her gripping his clothes, the raw, unadulterated trust of it, sends a jolt through Min Jae that feels like a live wire. Miller's hand flies to his waistband. The steel of a Glock 26 glints under the fluorescent lights. Min Jae doesn't draw a weapon. He doesn't even raise his fists. He simply stands. He expands his chest, his presence filling the aisle until it feels like there is no room left for Miller to breathe. He stares down the barrel of the gun with the bored indifference of a man who has looked at death so often they are on a first-name basis. "If you pull that trigger," Min Jae says, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that seems to vibrate the floorboards, "you had better kill me, because if I am still standing after the first shot, I will peel that snake off your arm while you're still breathing to see it." Miller's hand shakes. The gun wobbles. He looks at Min Jae's eyes, not the eyes of a hero, but the eyes of a monster who has decided to protect a lamb. Around them, the world has stopped. A mother in the next aisle covers her toddler's eyes. The hum of the freezer units feels like a countdown. Miller's gaze darts to the girl hiding behind Min Jae's legs. He sees her peering out, her big dark eyes no longer pleading, but defiant. She has chosen her side. She has chosen the dragon to protect her from the snake. "You're a dead man, Park," Miller spits, but the words are hollow. The weight of Min Jae's authority, the sheer, crushing gravity of his reputation, breaks the man's resolve. Miller knows the Vipers won't protect him if he starts a shootout with a Park-level boss in a public grocery store. That kind of heat brings down the whole city. Miller slowly lowers the gun, his eyes burning with a mix of cowardice and promised vengeance. He realizes the quiet snatch is now a loud disaster. Min Jae doesn't move. He waits, a statue of inked muscle and white cotton. He watches the micro-expressions on Miller's face, the calculation of a cornered rat. Miller steps back, then another, his boots scuffing the linoleum. "Keep her," Miller hisses, backing away toward the rear emergency exit. "See how long you last when the Tong finds out you're playing babysitter for a rat's litter." He turns and sprints, his heavy footsteps echoing through the store as he slams through the staff-only doors. Min-jae doesn't give chase. His priority is the weight against his leg. He looks down. The girl is still clutching his shirt, her chest heaving with silent, ragged breaths. The relief is palpable, a thick sweetness in the air, but beneath it, Min-jae feels a cold prickle at the base of his neck. But when the man bolted, Min-jae realized the real danger had only just begun. The emergency exit door is still vibrating from Miller's escape when the silence of aisle 4 is shattered from the opposite direction. Maya! Maya! The scream is raw, the sound of a lung-shredding panic that only a parent can produce. A woman bursts around the corner of the dairy section, her heels skidding on the polished floor. Her hair is disheveled, her coat half hanging off one shoulder, and her eyes are wide with the kind of frantic madness that follows a lost child. The girl, Maya, lets out a small, broken sob. It is the first sound she has made, a dam finally bursting. She lets go of Min-jae's shirt and sprints toward the woman. They collide in a heap of red stripes and frantic embrace, the mother falling to her knees on the cold linoleum. She buries her face in Maya's neck, her hands moving over the girl's arms and back with clinical urgency, checking for wounds, for blood, for the reality of her daughter's existence. I turned around, just for a second. The cereal. You were right there. The mother sobs, her voice a jagged wreck. She rocks Maya back and forth, the red beads in the girl's braids clacking rhythmically against her mother's shoulder. Min-jae stands perfectly still, a silent sentinel 5 feet away. He watches the reunion with a detachment that is purely superficial. Internally, his mind is already scanning the perimeter. Miller is gone, but men like that don't go far. They go to a payphone. They go to their superiors. He takes a step back, then another. He is a man who thrives in the shadows, and right now the light is too bright. The adrenaline is fading, replaced by the cold realization that he has just interfered in a syndicate kidnapping. He needs to vanish before the police arrive, before statements are taken, before his face ends up on a grainy security feed analyzed by the DA's office. He turns to walk away, his boots silent, his posture returning to that of the anonymous grocery shopper. Wait! The mother's voice stops him. It isn't a scream this time. It's a plea. Min-jae pauses but doesn't turn around immediately. He feels her presence as she stands up, clutching Maya's hand so tightly she'll likely leave marks. He finally turns his head, his profile sharp and unforgiving against the overhead lights. The mother is younger than he expected. She has the same caramel skin as Maya, but her face is etched with the exhaustion of a woman who has been running for a long time. She looks at Min-jae, really looks at him. She sees the blood on his knuckles from Miller's collar, the expensive tailoring of his clothes, and the ink that snakes up his neck. Most people look at the tattoos and see a criminal. She looks at them and sees the shield that just saved her child. You, she breathes, stepping closer despite the visible aura of danger surrounding him. You're the one, she told me. She signaled, and you stayed. Maya looks up at Min-jae, her eyes red-rimmed but shining with a strange, solemn reverence. She points at him, then touches her own palm. She's telling her mother about the signal. Thank you isn't enough, the mother says, her voice trembling. She reaches out as if to touch his arm, then hesitates, sensing the invisible wall he keeps around himself. She sees the silence in him, not the silence of a shy man, but the heavy, pressurized silence of a man who carries 1,000 secrets. You aren't a regular shopper, are you? Min-jae's jaw tenses. Go home, he says, his voice flat. Keep the doors locked. Don't come back to this store. He begins to turn again, but she steps into his path. Curiosity is beginning to override her fear. She senses a connection she can't quite name, a gravity pulling her toward this dangerous stranger. Please, she says. I need to know who saved her. I need to know who I'm indebted to. Min-jae looks at her, his dark eyes unreadable. You don't want to be indebted to me. I already am, she insists. What is your name? Min-jae hesitates. He shouldn't give it. But the girl, Maya, is looking at him with such pure, unfiltered hope that the lie dies in his throat. Park, he says quietly. Min-jae Park. The color drains from the mother's face. She doesn't gasp. She doesn't scream. She simply freezes, her hand flying to her mouth as she stares at him with a realization that is more terrifying than Miller's gun. The mother asked his name, and her reaction to hearing it was nothing he expected. The air in the cereal aisle turns to ice. The mother's hand drops from her mouth, but her fingers are trembling so violently they look like the wings of a dying bird. She takes a frantic step back, pulling Maya with her, the girl's red beads clacking against her white overalls. Min-jae Park, she whispers, the name sounding like a curse in the sterile air. Min-jae watches the transition on her face. The warmth of gratitude is being swallowed by the gray ash of recognition. He is used to this. He is the boogeyman of Busan, the iron shadow of the Park Syndicate. Usually, this look of sheer terror brings him a sense of cold professional satisfaction. Today, it feels like a lead weight in his stomach. You know who I am, Min-jae says. It isn't a question. Everyone in the Heights knows who you are, she says, her voice a thin wire. The man who cleaned out the waterfront. The man who doesn't leave witnesses. She looks at his hands, expecting them to be dripping with blood right there in front of the Cheerios. And yet, Min-jae gestures vaguely toward Maya. I am the reason she is still standing next to you. The mother's internal war is visible in the way her eyes dart between his face and her daughter's. She is caught in a horrific paradox. Her child's savior is the city's most feared monster. Why? She asks, her voice breaking. Why would someone like you care about a girl like her? Min-jae doesn't answer. He can't. He can't tell her that for 1 second, in the reflection of Maya's eyes, he didn't see a debt or a target. He saw a ghost of a life he might have had. Instead, he focuses on the immediate threat. He scans the store's entrance. The snake didn't work alone. Low-level thugs like Miller are pack hunters. They don't attempt to snatch and grab on a high-value target without backup waiting in the parking lot. We need to move, Min-jae says, his voice regaining its sharp, authoritative edge. Miller wasn't acting on impulse. He was acting on orders. Miller? She gasps. You know him? I know his ink. He's Viper Tong. But the Vipers are scavengers. They don't touch civilians in broad daylight unless someone higher up gave them the green light. Min-jae feels the walls closing in. The internal conflict is a localized storm in his chest. If he stays, he draws the girl into the center of a mafia war. If he leaves, she is a sitting duck. He looks at Maya. She isn't looking at him with fear anymore. She's looking at him with the same unwavering trust she had when she signaled for help. She hasn't let go of the idea that he is her protector. The Vipers are just the beginning. Min-jae continues, his eyes tracking a black SUV that just rolled slowly past the front windows. Who is your husband? What did he do to the syndicate? The mother's face goes from pale to translucent. She pulls Maya closer, her voice dropping so low it barely clears the hum of the refrigerators. My husband. He's been gone for 6 months, Min-jae. He didn't just rat on a shipment. He was the lead architect for the new port security system. The system your family designed to be impenetrable. Min-jae's pulse spikes. If her husband built the system, he didn't just sell a shipment. He held the master key to the Park Syndicate's entire smuggling infrastructure. They aren't just kidnapping her for ransom, are they? Min-jae asks, the realization dawning with a sickening clarity. The mother looks at the floor, a single tear tracing a path through the dust on her cheek. Miller, the man you just chased away? He didn't just find us by accident today. He's been following us for weeks. She leans in, her voice a ghost of a whisper. She revealed something about her daughter's attempted abductor that connected directly to Min-jae's past. Miller wasn't just a stranger, Min-jae. He was the man who drove the car the night your own brother was taken. The ripples of the grocery store encounter spread through the city's concrete veins like hemlock. In the backrooms of smoke-filled mahjong parlors and neon-drenched bars, the whispers begin. Min-jae Park, the Iron Shadow, has broken rank. He protected a rat's daughter. He crossed the Viper Tong. By dusk, the atmosphere in the city has curdled. Min-jae sits in the back of a charcoal gray sedan, parked 3 blocks away from the mother's cramped apartment building. He doesn't turn on the lights. He doesn't check his phone. He simply watches the street through the rearview mirror, his eyes scanning for the telltale shimmer of headlights or the sudden movement of a spotter on a street corner. His phone vibrates in his pocket, a relentless, buzzing insect. It's his uncle, the chairman. It's the syndicate's enforcers. They want to know why he stalled a retrieval operation. They want to know why the Vipers are demanding a formal apology in blood. Min-jae ignores them all. His mind is a chaotic battlefield. Miller. The name keeps echoing. The man who drove the car when Min-jae's younger brother, Sang-hoon, was abducted and disappeared into the ether of an unsolved case. For years, Min-jae had searched for that car, that driver, that ghost. To find him now, holding the hand of an innocent girl, feels like a cruel joke orchestrated by a vengeful god. He watches the third-floor window of the apartment. A warm, yellow light flickers on. He imagines the mother, Sarah, locking the 3 deadbolts he told her to buy. He imagines Maya, sitting at a kitchen table, her red beads clicking as she eats a bowl of the very cereal they had been fighting over. A strange, uncomfortable warmth spreads through his chest, a sensation that feels entirely alien. He is a man who has built his life on the absence of attachment. Attachment is a tether is a target. Yet, as he watches that window, he feels a pull stronger than any oath he's ever sworn to the Park family. He isn't just protecting a witness anymore. He is protecting a version of himself that hasn't been broken yet. The street is too quiet. The usual urban cacophony, the distant sirens, the barking dogs, has been replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. Min-jae notices them before they even turn the corner. 2 men in hooded sweatshirts standing by a bus stop, not looking at their phones, but at the entrance to Sarah's building. They are scouts, the eyes of the Viper Tong, or perhaps something worse. The Vipers wouldn't dare move on a park boss unless they had backing from a rival syndicate. The game has changed. The rescue in the grocery store wasn't an isolated incident. It was the first pebble in an avalanche. He grips the steering wheel, his knuckles cracking in the dark. He could leave. He could call his uncle, hand over the address, and be restored to his position of power. He could let the machine of the underworld grind Sarah and Maya into dust. Instead, he reaches into the glove box and pulls out a heavy, matte black suppressor. He screws it onto his handgun with slow, rhythmic turns. Click, click, click. He isn't going anywhere. The clock on the dashboard shifts to 2:14 a.m. The streetlights flicker, casting long, skeletal shadows across the pavement. Then he sees it. A black SUV with tinted windows and no license plates rounds the corner. It doesn't cruise. It crawls. It moves with the predatory grace of a shark circling a reef. It glides past the scouts, who give a subtle nod. The vehicle doesn't stop, but it slows to a crawl directly in front of the apartment entrance. The engine is a low, guttural growl that vibrates in the glass of Min-jae's windshield. Min-jae's hand moves to the door handle, his heart rate settling into the steady, lethal rhythm of a hunter. A vehicle slowed outside their apartment late at night, and Min-jae wasn't the only one who noticed. The SUV brakes squeal, a thin, metallic cry that pierces the 2 a.m. stillness. Min-jae is out of his car before the tires stop rotating. He moves through the shadows of the parked vehicles like a ghost made of ink and iron. He doesn't head for the SUV, he heads for the fire escape. 2 men exit the vehicle. They aren't wearing the loud, flashy colors of the Vipers. These are cleaners' men in gray tactical windbreakers, moving with the synchronized efficiency of former military. One carries a heavy-duty bolt cutter. The other has a hand resting on a holstered suppressed weapon. They aren't here to talk or intimidate. They are here to finish the retrieval. Min-jae reaches the third-floor landing just as the first shadow appears in the hallway. He doesn't use his gun. A gunshot, even suppressed, is a signature. He uses the environment. As the lead man reaches for the door handle of apartment 3B, Min-jae lunges from the stairwell. The violence is swift and silent. He catches the first man in a sleeper hold, using his body weight to drive the man's head into the doorframe with a muffled thud. Before the second man can draw, Min-jae delivers a localized strike to his throat, followed by a knee to the solar plexus. The man collapses, gasping for air that won't come. Min-jae drags both unconscious bodies into the shadows of the service closet. His breath barely hitched. The door to 3B cracks open. Sarah stands there, holding a heavy kitchen knife, her eyes bloodshot and wild. Behind her, Maya is huddled in the hallway, her red beads clicking as she shivers. "Get back inside," Min-jae says, his voice a harsh whisper. He pushes his way in and locks the deadbolts himself. The apartment smells of lavender laundry detergent and the metallic tang of fear. Sarah stares at him, her gaze moving from his bruised knuckles to the cold, predatory stillness in his eyes. "They were outside, weren't they?" she asks, her voice trembling. "The men who took my husband. They're gone for now," Min-jae says. "But they'll be back with more. You need to understand, Sarah, Maya didn't just see a kidnapping. She saw Miller. She saw the driver. She is the only living person who can link the Vipers to the Park Syndicate's internal betrayals. To them, she is a loose thread. And they don't untie threads. They burn them." Maya creeps forward, reaching out to touch the fabric of Min-jae's sleeve. She doesn't see the monster the world sees. She sees the man who makes the bad things go away. Min-jae flinches at the touch, a phantom sensation of a brother's hand he hasn't felt in decades. "You have to leave," Sarah says suddenly, her fear twisting into a sharp, defensive anger. "You're making it worse. If you weren't here, maybe we could run. But with you here, it's a war. You're a target, Min-jae. Why are you doing this? You don't know us. You're a man who kills for a living, and now you're playing guardian angel." She steps into his space, her eyes searching his for a lie, for a motive, for a hidden price tag. The vulnerability in the room is suffocating. Min-jae looks at the little girl, then back at the mother. The iron shadow cracks, just enough for the light to leak through. "I'm not a guardian angel, Sarah," he says, his voice low and jagged. "I'm a man looking for a ghost. Miller was the driver the night my brother was taken. I've spent 10 years looking for a way back to that night. I can't walk away because if I save her, maybe I finally save him." The silence that follows is heavy, thick with the shared trauma of two people hunted by the same darkness. The mother asked him the question he feared most. "Why us?" His answer changed everything. "Because she's the only one who signaled back." The apartment is a cage of shadows. Outside, the city breathes with a predatory hum. But inside, the only sound is the rhythmic clack-clack of Maya's beads as she sits on the floor, stacking mismatched coasters. Min-jae stands by the window, his silhouette a sharp, jagged cut against the distant city lights. He hasn't sat down in 6 hours. His phone vibrates on the granite countertop. It is a text from his second-in-command, a man he once trusted with his life. "The chairman is asking for your location. The Vipers have offered a truce if we hand over the girl. Don't be a martyr for a ghost, Min-jae. Come home." Min-jae stares at the screen. The choice is a binary pulse of light in the dark. On one side, the syndicate, his family, the absolute power he has spent a lifetime cultivating. If he leaves now, he can claim he was investigating the Vipers and return to his throne. On the other side, this cramped apartment, a mother with eyes full of shattered glass, and a girl who looks at him as if he invented the stars. "You're going to leave, aren't you?" Sarah's voice is soft, coming from the doorway of the kitchen. She has a mug of tea in her hands, but she isn't drinking. The steam rises between them, a fragile veil. Min-jae doesn't turn. "I should, for your sake. If I stay, The level of violence coming to this door will be something you can't imagine. It's already here, Min Jae, she says, her voice gaining a sudden, desperate strength. She walks toward him, stopping just outside his personal space. The scent of lavender and fear has been replaced by something else. The smell of rain and resolve. I saw those men you put in the closet. I saw the way you move. You're not just a target. You're the only wall between us and a shallow grave. She reaches out, her fingers grazing the white fabric of his sleeve, right over the spot where his tattoos bleed into his skin. Her touch is tentative, a bridge built over an abyss of distrust. I don't like who you are. I don't like what you've done. But I see the way you look at her. You're not looking at a loose thread. You're looking at a person. Min Jae finally turns. His face is a mask of stone, but his eyes are turbulent. If I take responsibility for you, there is no going back. I become a traitor to my own blood. I become a man without a country. You were already that man the moment you stepped into that grocery aisle, Sarah whispers. Maya looks up from her coasters. She stands, walks over to Min Jae, and wraps her small arms around his leg. She doesn't say a word. She simply leans her head against his thigh, the red beads in her braids coming to rest against the dark fabric of his trousers. The physical weight of her, the absolute terrifying trust, is the final hammer blow to his resolve. Min Jae reaches down, his large, scarred hand hovering over her head before he finally, awkwardly, lets it rest on her shoulder. He is no longer just a watcher. He is a participant. Pack a bag, Min Jae says, his voice thick with the gravity of his defection. 1 bag each. No electronics. We leave in 10 minutes. The night settles in as they hunker down in a safe house, a windowless basement apartment owned by a man who owes Min Jae a life. The air is stale, the furniture mismatched. Sarah and Maya share a small cot in the corner, while Min Jae sits by the door, a silent gargoyle with his gun resting on his knee. Sleep eventually claims Sarah, her breathing evening out into a heavy, exhausted rhythm. But the trauma of the day isn't finished with the girl. Maya tosses and turns, her small hands clutching the thin blanket. Her beads click frantically against the metal frame of the cot. A low moan escapes her throat, the sound of a child lost in a forest of monsters. Min Jae leans forward, his heart tightening in a way that feels like a physical injury. That night, the girl had a nightmare and whispered Min Jae's name. The safe house is no longer safe. The betrayal comes not from a shadow, but from the glowing screen of Min Jae's burner phone. A single image, his uncle, the chairman, sitting in a tea house with the leader of the Viper Tong. The message underneath is a death warrant. The girl is the price of your seat at the table, Min Jae. Bring her to the shipyard by dawn, or we burn the city to find you. Min Jae looks at Sarah and Maya. They are huddled on the cot, the girl finally asleep after her nightmare, her hand still clutching a scrap of Min Jae's discarded overcoat. He realizes then that his presence is the magnet drawing the lightning. To save them, he has to cut the cord. He has to become the target so they can become ghosts. Get up, he commands, his voice like grinding stones. He thrusts a heavy envelope of cash and 2 forged passports into Sarah's hands. There's a car 2 blocks south. The keys are under the wheel well. Go to the border. Don't look back. Min Jae, no. Sarah starts, but the air is suddenly ripped apart. The front door doesn't just open. It disintegrates. A flashbang grenade detonates in the narrow hallway, a blinding white scream of light and sound. Min Jae is moving before the smoke can settle. He shoves Sarah and Maya toward the rear exit, his body a shield against the incoming rain of glass. But the Vipers aren't low-level thugs anymore. They have sent their elite, men in tactical gear, silenced submachine guns raised. They aren't here for a snatch and grab. This is an execution. Run! Min Jae roars. As they scramble for the back alley, a spray of bullets chews through the drywall. Sarah stumbles, a cry of pain escaping her as a stray round grazes her shoulder. She falls, and in an instant, 3 gunmen round the corner, their sights locked onto the mother and child. Min-jae doesn't seek cover. He does the unthinkable for a man of his stature. He steps into the center of the kill zone. He stands in the open, his white shirt now stained with soot and Sarah's blood, and unleashes a calculated fury. He fires with terrifying precision, taking down the first two gunmen, but he is one man against a tide. The alleyway explodes into a battlefield. The public nature of the safe house means people are watching from the apartments above. Smartphones are recording. The Iron Shadow is being caught on camera. His face exposed to the world, his career as a ghost over. Maya stops. She sees Min-jae take a hit to his shoulder, the impact spinning him around. She sees him drop to one knee, blood blooming like a dark rose on his white sleeve. He is being outnumbered. 6 more men emerge from the shadows, their weapons leveled at his chest. Go! Min-jae coughs, his eyes meeting Maya's. His hand is shaking as he raises his weapon for one last stand. The blue and red strobes of police sirens begin to bounce off the brick walls in the distance. The authorities are minutes away. The Vipers hesitate, looking at the sirens, then back at their prize. Miller, the man with the snake tattoo, steps forward from the back of the pack, a jagged grin on his face as he aims his gun at Min-jae's head. Maya doesn't run. She breaks from her mother's grip and takes a step toward the man who saved her. The world seems to slow. The rain begins to fall, washing the soot from her braids. She looks at the men in the shadows, then at the bleeding giant on his knees. She raises her hand, but she isn't making the help signal. She is reaching out, her small fingers trembling, trying to bridge the gap between her innocence and his ruin. As sirens wailed and shadows closed in, the little girl reached out her hand again, this time toward Min-jae, and whispered a trembling plea that would change both their lives forever. Don't go back to the dark. Please, Daddy, stay.